Let's adjourn now and resume at 9:30 tomorrow.
Thank you,
Thank you, Chair.
Well, there you have it. Fadil Adams concludes his testimony, at least for today. He's been testifying at the Madlanga Commission, where his evidence is being closely scrutinized. And Adams has been questioned about his credibility, including his admission that he was not truthful when he previously told the Commission that he had not received correspondence from the inquiry. He started the morning also facing questions over the late submission of his affidavit as well. And he has further been probed about allegations that case dockets linked to his complaints actually went missing. That was the last part of the proceedings today. And what happened to those cases after they were lodged with the authorities is another point that's also been discussed by commissioners as well, while probing Adams's testimony. And the Commission is also examining Adams's Section 27 referral to the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption, or IDAC, which led to a probe or investigation involving senior crime intelligence officials, and questions also having been raised about how that referral was handled, whether IDAC had the proper mandate to investigate, and the circumstances surrounding a disputed statement attributed to Adams as well. And he has also previously alleged that there was a plot to have him killed, allegations that have been denied by those he implicated, including J.P. Smith. And the Commission is therefore examining both these allegations that have been made by Adams against senior officials and the matter, or rather the manner in which his complaints and evidence were handled by law enforcement authorities. We now cross live to our reporters who are stationed in Tshwane, that's Canny Maphanga, as well as SA Today anchor Thembekile Mrototo, who are following the latest developments at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. Thembekile, we heard Adams' testimony being tested against questions around his credibility, his Section 27 referral to IDAC, and also the serious allegations that he has made against senior police figures. What has emerged as the most significant issue from today's proceedings, Thembekile?
Danta, you've covered a fair deal of that ground. What we've been dealing with in the last, let's say, hour or so is basically Fadil Adams' claim that he then moved on from the Western Cape to opening a case in Gauteng because the dockets, he claims, in Cape Town had gone missing. Now, what appears to be tricky is him explaining that tight timeline from the day that he lodged complaints with the police to when ultimately, in subsequent days, hours, in fact, a day or two, he then felt, or he says he was told by a police officer who's since passed away, that those dockets had gone missing. And he says that is what prompted him to then reach out to the Western Cape Police Commissioner at the time, Thembekile, pardon me, to complain at that moment about what he believed then was a process that had gone awry for some reason with the alleged disappearance of these dockets, which he says were later found in Gauteng. But the evidence leader says even that on Adams' account has not been captured correctly. Let's bring in SABC News senior reporter Canny Maphanga with me here at the Bridget Mabandla Justice College. I was explaining to Canny the issue of Fadil Adams going to lodge this complaint with the police, right? Then basically a few hours later says a police, I don't want to use the word informant, but someone he knew in the police service then tipped him off that these dockets had gone missing. But that timeline is raising questions.
Absolutely. It's about testing the sequence of events and whether or not Fadil Adams did all of this action, all of these events, in order to formalize his referral to IDAC. So you have nowhere else to turn to. There's alleged corruption, people are intercepting your docket, so now you have no choice but to go to IDAC and have your complaint referred there, which then gives way for the kind of conduct that we saw take place there, because it cannot be expected that for you to raise something today that the commissioner or the provincial commissioner must give you a response the very same day about the investigations. Even if you went to go open a case now at the police station, you would wait for your case number, which could take a day before that came through. But seemingly he carries the expectation that he was supposed to get answers immediately. And I don't think this probing has anything to do with that particular explanation that he's giving. It's really about testing whether or not he was part of the alleged orchestrated filing of this particular matter, and whether or not this was all just covering the ground so that you could find a way to refer the matter to IDAC after not finding any joy with the cases that you opened in the Western Cape or the cases that you opened in Gauteng. But none of this would have happened in the short time frame upon which is being relayed to him now. And that's the tough test he's going to have to follow, because the sequence of events and the steps leading up to the Section 27 referral, and then of course the subsequent highly irregular or allegedly unlawful conduct that would follow IDAC in Project Diversion, is what's being tested here in totality. We know that he is the person who's responsible for the Section 27 referral affidavit. It's about testing whether there was allegedly anything sinister in his own conduct and his alleged role in IDAC's investigations into crime intelligence matters, or the interest into crime intelligence matters, and whether or not he handled the information he received as well as the subsequent investigations he tried to trigger properly, or was this all about setting the foundation for IDAC to then take over, and then we know what then took place after that, or what the consequences of IDAC's involvement in crime intelligence was.
And just something that the chairperson of the commission picked up on, the Western Cape Police Commissioner, the then Commissioner of Police in the Western Cape, General Thembekile, who I almost renamed just now, he receives a call from Fadil Adams, I think the very next day on the timeline that we're working on, about the alleged theft of these dockets. But he then, Adams, explains that he basically expected instant sort of action or a commitment from the Western Cape Police Commissioner in terms of action that would be taken based on his complaint. But then Commissioner Baloyi asked, what was the point if you didn't even trust that the Commissioner would act on what you were saying, even after he said, I need time to investigate?
And he didn't even give the opportunity for such an investigation to take place. The Commissioner tells him, I will look into this matter, and hours later you're on to the next step, which then gives the rise to questions surrounding what was the rush, what really was these steps all about, and that feeds into the narrative that this was allegedly all an orchestrated attack, and this was just someone being slipped in to give formality to the process, because an IDAC complaint has to come by way of referral. And Fadil Adams starts with all these steps, which seemingly seem above board, but the pace in which he goes from one to the other and quickly abandons the other to go to the other, and then eventually ends up at IDAC, is what's really being put to the test here. And the question is whether or not there's anything sinister about what he had done. And this is still the early questioning phase, but ultimately the Commission will get to the bottom of whether or not Fadil Adams was allegedly part of this, or allegedly a hired gun, as Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi has previously claimed about Fadil Adams. And this was all just about formalizing the entrance to turn into IDAC in order to facilitate what would then become a full-blown investigation that did not engage IDAC's mandate and was riddled with illegalities, allegedly with the hopes of targeting high-ranking generals.
And we got a glimpse, I use that word advisedly, of what was slipped on his version. The documents from crime intelligence slipped under his doors, the assumption at this point at Parliament. And he was asked about what was in that document that basically roused suspicion on his part that a crime may have been committed.
And he struggled with explaining what really was concerning about what was inside that particular envelope, which we now know dealt with the forklift issue within crime intelligence and the polygraph test that Madondo had allegedly failed. And he can't explain in quite great detail as to what prompted him to immediately go open a case, or when he spoke to Ian Cameron at the time, why he didn't just leave the matter there. And he said that they have no investigative powers. He called them glorified administrators as parliamentarians.
MPs, yes.
Yes. And then he went forth with his explanations of why he went to different police stations. And ultimately, it's a case that ends up with IDAC, but we don't know how they go from the forklift case into full-blown investigations that have little to do with what was first stated in his complaint to begin with. So this sequence of events is going to be quite crucial, because that is where you'll be able to spot the flaws, if any exist, with respect to his intentions, his role and his motivation with respect to what would later become known as Project Diversion and would later lead to cases being dismantled before the criminal courts. And we know that the Mugwele matter is set to be withdrawn unconditionally on Friday. So certainly those consequences are starting to follow, even though in his initial statement he distances himself from the kind of conduct that followed IDAC afterwards. But it's all born out of his statement, and there is events that precede what then takes place, and it's about testing whether or not he was allegedly in on this particular event that is being described as something that was allegedly coordinated, planned and orchestrated against these high-ranking generals as part of an alleged fight back within those SABC factional battles. So he's far from over. 9:30 a.m. tomorrow morning, he continues with the hard probing questioning, and the commission is set to get to the bottom of Fadil Adams' alleged role in this particular saga that has really blown up before the commission, and the kind of illegality that followed these crime intelligence matters is really something that has truly shocked the nation, and it's something that his evidence is going to be critical to, because the sequence of events is quite crucial to understanding the intention and the alleged motive of Project Diversion, as well as this particular interest within crime intelligence.
And just briefly on tomorrow then, Canny, Fadil Adams, we were going to continue until 4:30, at least that's what the chairperson wanted to do, asking to leave at around 4 p.m. because he's got some homework tonight. Let's talk about the additional documents that we know he now has to read through before he comes back tomorrow, and how those might shape the direction of his evidence, his testimony.
Well, the bundle that he got yesterday that he was raising, that was the commission collating the statements that he had provided to them, and they were putting it into one bundle for him. So it's stuff that he should have seen before, because it's stuff he provided to the commission. So he probably just wants to have a look over what that possible information could be, as he is set to face a lot of contradictory statements and evidence with respect to his alleged role in the IDAC interest into crime intelligence.
Canny, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much, SABC News senior reporter Canny Maphanga. Canny and I will be back here at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry tomorrow with day 2 of Fadil Adams, the leader of the National Coloured Congress, appearance here at the Commission. That's from 9:30 on Thursday.
Well, that's our team stationed at the Justice Bridget Mabandla College out in Tshwane, and you've been listening from the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, where Fadil Adams has faced a grilling about his allegations against police officials, but also his own conduct as well, coming under sharp focus during proceedings today. Well, that matter continues again tomorrow morning.